Norbert, we're finally doing this.
I know. Hey, Scott, how are you? It's only been like, what, a year in the making?
A year in the making, but
Yeah.
every conversation has led to this moment. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Glad to be here finally.
So we'll talk a little bit later about how we met and the dynamics of the conversations we've been having. But maybe we get started today. I'll ask you, just tell the folks that don't know you who you are, what you do, and then I'll do the same.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. My name's Norby Belz. I am the founder and president of Save a Learning. We're a company that does workshops, training, courses for personal, professional, team, and leadership development. So that is what we do. And that is what I do every day from here, from home.
And I know when we met, we were kind of fascinated by the synergy that I come out of the corporate world almost 100%. Your background is, let them know kind of the kinds of clients and your background as well.
Yeah, so my background is actually academic. I spent nearly 17 years in an academic medical center, most of which I was a college professor and a department chair. When I left the university, I started Save a Learning so that I could do what we were doing at the university, but on a much larger scale. Over the last several years, I've worked with a lot of nonprofits, a lot of individuals who are starting their own businesses, and then a few businesses who want to ramp up their current business.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, you already know, but for the folks that have never met me, I've spent nearly half my life now as a inclusion facilitator, someone that loves to get great dialogue going on the topics of diversity, our differences, our biases. I similar to you, I started in higher education. I spent 10 years in higher ed, and now for 27 years have been in the mostly corporate space of working with our clients are typically heads of diversity, chief diversity officers, VP of HR, and almost exclusively what I've done and what I'm doing is training, education, facilitation, and I have a great team of 10 facilitators around the country that help me make that happen. So we are going to talk about where our work and our universe and our passions cross over. We're excited about the prospect of partnering together. We've had some really fun lunches talking about how we envision that, how we see that transpiring. But I think when you and I were preparing for this, we both thought that it would be helpful to go a little bit into the, let's say, the challenges that we're both seeing in our respective space. So would you like to do that first, or would you like me to do that first, Norby?
I can just dive in and just talk a little bit about the challenges I'm seeing kind of in the leadership and the team development space, because that's where a lot of companies are spending the money. And honestly, the biggest challenge that we're seeing is communication. It's like, you've probably heard this before, but 90% of our issues at work and probably at home are communication. And the biggest challenge is that 90% or up to 90% of our communication is nonverbal. So, it's like, what is this? And a lot of companies spend thousands of dollars trying to figure out how to have their employees work together more effectively. They spend money on all these assessments. And they're really great to kind of put people into these boxes. Like, it's like I'm an ESPN or something. And what it doesn't really show us how we can get out of those boxes and really work effectively with others and specifically communicate with others. I had some experiences very early on when we used these assessments that people would be in my office and having problems and saying, well, I'm an E or an I, so I'm emotive and that's just how I am. And using that as an excuse rather than, how we adapt. It's like, if we're having a conversation, then one of us has to flex to adapt to the other, versus creating a communication, a culture around what I call conscious communication, where we can both meet together in a common language.
Mm-hmm. And is that communication as a challenge, is that been a consistent through all of your years of working with leaders, or has something evolved and changed possibly that's made it even more of an issue?
It's always been a challenge. I mean, think back on all of your challenges, they probably relate to communication. But I will say in our post, pandemic world, it's gotten a little more challenging, especially because a lot of people are remote. A lot of people are working in isolation. A lot of people are using Zoom and technologies to communicate. So that adds another layer of challenges into what we already had before, which is challenges around communication. So I would say it's always been there. I think it's just amplified more now in this world that we live in, the virtual world.
And I can connect to that. You know that I can connect to that because of the work that I'm passionate about. That if 90%, you say 90% of communication is nonverbal, then the work I do comes and intersects directly, because what do I do with your nonverbal communication that I'm filtering through my cultural lens, through my interpretation of what that nonverbal means? And I'm doing what humans do. I make up a story, I project from my own background into that, and I make meaning out of your communication when naturally I really don't have a clue what you meant. And if I don't have the skills, which I know is what you teach, to be able to get below the waterline and scope that out, then I'm operating on false assumptions. We've created a dynamic between each other that is based on assumptions instead of on conscious, deliberate, intentional leadership and communication. So that's why I fell in love with the work that you do.
Yeah, and it's left to interpretation, right? Interpretation is everything, and then it's really in the eye of the beholder. So who's interpreting it? And we know it from your work that we all have these unconscious biases, and we also know from the work that I do that we make up all these stories about what's happening rather than really getting to the true heart of what's actually going on. So
I got that loud and clear. Well, I'll parallel what you shared. It's not an easy one-word answer of what is the challenge of my work. And I'll let you know, Norby, I didn't even have a chance before we started to record to let you know that I had an amazing conversation today with a millennial diversity practitioner who the universe sent him to me today in today's conversation because he helped me kind of reshape what I would answer. What is the challenge of DEI work now? Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belongingness is just the fact that I had to use 4 letters in an acronym. We used to be happy with 3-letter acronyms. Now we're up to 4 and more. Is that every practitioner, diversity and inclusion practitioner that I've ever worked with who's still in the game, they've had to evolve with each of those letters being added to the acronym. That to say what is the challenge of the work that I do, there is no answer. It actually depends on whether you're focused on representation of the workforce in 2023. That's a very different conversation about the challenges of how equity and our approach to equity is approaching representation. We still in 2023 are looking at underrepresentation of women and people of color in almost every organization at the upper levels of the organization. So we're 35 years, 40 years into this journey, and we still haven't conquered representation. We started talking about inclusion around the year 2000, and we had this ideal that we could fully leverage the talent of everybody if we transformed the culture. No company has achieved the standard definition of inclusion that we use, which is everybody experiences belongingness. I'll come back to that idea later. Everybody experiences equitable opportunities to achieve success. It actually, if there's a challenge, it might be similar to what you said, that communication has always been there as the core challenge and opportunity for us to get better at. And what we know for sure is that the work that myself, my peers, and my clients are doing, that it's never ending. There's no end post to say we've mastered this. It's maybe you've heard people say, Norby, that DEI is a journey. And one of my mentors impressed on me that usually a journey has an ending, unless you're a wealthy person on a around the world cruise and they just keep changing each year where they're cruising to. Most journeys have an ending. This is not a journey. the work that I do, similar to what you do, is more like a wellness program. And every year we go to our doctor for our wellness checkup, and the program may change. That's what practitioners in my space do. We keep tweaking and adjusting and adding to the mixture and the formula. And it's one of the hardest things to do, is to take a traditional culture and make it a truly representative and inclusive culture where everybody belongs. It's hard stuff. And that's what I love working with our clients to help them along the way to make that happen.
I love that. That's where our work really overlaps, that belongingness, right? Because it is communication is the foundation for all of this. And in the work that I do, it's really helping to create the space where we can have conversations. So that's really the foundation for what we're calling belongingness. And I love that, because that's where we overlap. And just like you're talking about the culture, I also really focus in on the individual within the culture and within the team, because what's going on in here is being, pushed out into the workforce, into their teams. What we have going on here is actually being, felt externally, because that's why so much of our communication nonverbal is felt. It's like when you've met somebody, right? You felt the energy where they're just kind of closed off and they're not really wanting to have a conversation. So that's a lot of the work that we have to do, is really diving into that intrapersonal, like what's going on here, so that I can have those communications effectively, and also to support that culture of belongingness, if you will.
Yeah, and I've loved totally. I've appreciated the approach and the style and your way of being with your clients when I've sat in on sessions. And from doing the same, sitting in on both of our programs, that we have a way of being, a matter of style of leading people to the water. We don't make people drink. We can't do that. Neither can you. But we have similar ways of being in making that happen. And just now, when you were talking about a leader communicating with someone on their team, if you don't mind me sharing, I love just the simple tool, one of hundreds of simple tools that you share, that we can all, right now I'm looking at the top bar of my MacBook, and I have a really strong Wi-Fi signal. I'm right down the hall from my Wi-Fi. And when I'm in that mode personally, if I think about my own signal, I'm in it right now with you. I'm totally present. I'm not thinking about yesterday, tomorrow, the next hour. So I'm hearing you in a way that's landing in my heart. I'm hearing you in a way that I'm giving you the same energy that you're giving me back. I want to talk forever with you, right? Yeah. So you talk about helping leaders to develop the EQ skill of acknowledging, am I at a low signal, frequency, or high? And we say in our work, it's never a good time to have a talent conversation, because we do a lot of work with leaders around managing their biases when they're managing talent, when they're reviewing resumes, when they're doing an interview, when they're doing a one-on-one review, when they're running a staff meeting, which I know you have lots of tools for staff meetings, that if they can develop that maturity, that EQ to say, where am I on the Wi-Fi signal? Yeah. That becomes a muscle. You and I both like going to the gym, I know. It's not easy at the beginning. If we fall out of practice for a month, it's hard to get back into the swing. So that's that wellness journey. The more we can make this part and parcel of the way leaders show up most of their day, then that creates the energetic vibration that goes out to the individual contributor, the teammate, to say, I feel valued, respected, included, because my leader is monitoring their energy. And then we get teams that are feeling that way, and it starts to be an energy that generates even better outcomes. With inclusion, with the way people feel more highly engaged, which we all know we want highly engaged people, and the way they feel about the leader, the way they're solving problems, all the good stuff we want in organizations.
Absolutely. And what I love too, experiencing your workshops, is the practical side of things. Both of us really believe in the fact of making things simple, practical, things that you can actually take out, understand today, and then utilize today. And so, absolutely having that EQ of what's going on in here, but then also having the ability to communicate that to others when I'm not in the good, full energy space, when I'm not fully connected, to say, now's not a really good time. I'm not present. I'm not fully connected, or whatever language you want to use. And people understand that and they don't take it personal. And I love that when I sat in with your workshops, there was so much overlap with what I do in the practicality of things, the language, the simplicity of it, and the experiential too, just the hands-on.
Yes. And yes, I agree. That's the synergy that we've discovered. That didn't happen immediately, right? It took me a few minutes to practice what I preach.
Yeah.
Maybe it's worth me telling the story about our initial meeting. I was going to throw in that what you shared, there's a really positive evolution. In addition to the D, the E, the I, the B, there's probably some other letters that will be added to that. But post-COVID, or during COVID, and during the turbulent summer that we had, 2020, and a lot of organizations started talking about psychological safety. And I know you're familiar with the concept, but if we can make it safe for people to say, like you use the example, hey, I'm not in the headspace that I need to be for this to be a productive conversation. If I'm a leader and can hear that from one of my teammates and give them some grace, we gave incredible grace during Zoom world time, with families and with pets crawling on our shoulders. And I loved that period of time. We just gave people grace to say, this is a imperfect time. I hope we can keep that spirit with us when we all go back to the office, if we go back to the office.
Yeah. Do you want to share when we first met? Because I love this conversation, because people think when you're in this work, like you're the almighty and you don't mess this up. And it's like, no, when we're in this work, we even screw it up sometimes, right?
Yeah. Well, you and I know the story well, that we both are a part of a spiritual community here in Fort Lauderdale, where we both live. And I was invited to, during the pandemic, we were back to in-person events. The in-person event I was asked to speak at, some people had masks, some people didn't. So I kind of remember a lot of people dialed in. You dialed in, we know. And it was the pastor of our church and me on stage. And it was a great topic. It was unconscious bias, which is my specialty, to conscious spirituality, which is the topic of our awesome pastor, Chris Michaels. And you dialed in, I believe it was 90 minutes to 2 hours. We had incredible engagement with the audience. And afterwards, you sent me an email. You told me that you do learning development, learning delivery, you do leadership development, leadership development, leadership delivery, and that you enjoyed the presentation and you'd love to meet sometime. Your name is Norbert Belz, and it's crazy ridiculous that we actually, in all of our workshops, talk about name bias on resumes, that we make up a story. If it's the name of our worst kindergarten teacher or third grade teacher, we subtly project into that person's name. If they have the same name as ours, I tend to be positively biased toward other Scots. About the resume study, where people with white sounding names got a better reading of their resume than black sounding names. I read Norbert. I thought nerd, not that I have any against nerds, but I made up a story that you sit at home and tune into as many webcasts as you can, and then you try to reach out to people and make friends. So I put you off for quite a while. And then I don't remember if you followed up or I finally emailed. What do you remember about that?
I followed up because it was funny, because dealing with my own stuff, it was like, why is this guy not getting back to me? And I made up my own story in my head. And then when I, checked in with what I do, it's like the best way is just to reach out and actually to talk, and so I reached out with a little more persistence that time and just said, let's meet.
So we met for lunch or coffee, and within the first 3 seconds, I realized what I had done, that I had put you in a box. I had made up a story, and we've had how many lunches and coffees and Zoom conversations in the last year?
When I love
20.
that you when I love that you shared it right away too, because
I told you
that's
at that first meeting, I told you.
first
Yeah.
meeting, and that's where we want to get to in our organizations we work with. We want to have those conversations and get it out of the way right off the bat, so we're not sitting on those biases, we're not sitting on those stories and making them more expansive and more, detrimental. So we really want to have those conversations. So, and that's really when I decided I really want to work with Scott, because that was the first thing you said when we first met. And I love that, because I was like, that's the connection that I felt with you when you did that, the recorded Zoom. And I was like, there's a connection there, and I want to explore that. So I'm so glad we did. And I'm so glad we finally made it here today to do this. So this is
Yes.
awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
So
So what else? What else do we want to talk about today to
I think
wrap?
just maybe just what this can mean for the people in our networks, our clients, our perspectives, that the combination of what we do, the belongingness, the inclusiveness, and then that, EQ, the emotional intelligence, the social awareness, the communication, the two of our content, if you will, our workshops, our companies, collaborating together. It's such a profound opportunity for clients to really take it, not only to say, hey, now that we fully get we have bias, what do we do and how do we communicate? How do we ingrain this into what we do? And with both of our companies working together, helping them to support them in many different ways and support them throughout the entire process with really practical, applicable things that they can do to really help start to shift that culture for them. And the experience, more importantly, shift the experience for their employees, where they truly feel that belonging.
Yeah, I'll just pile on there that this, and if my clients are watching, which I hope they are, some of them, they'll know this, that my firm has had an embarrassment of riches. We don't advertise, we don't do marketing. We've grown year over year since I left IBM in 2014 with word of mouth. And what we do, we approach the topic in a beautiful, unique, experiential way. And some of those more committed clients did what you just said. They said, we love this. We love partnering with you. Our leaders love taking your workshops. Now what? And I've never had a now what. I thought the now what had to be something with role playing and case studies, because in my 27 years, that's how we approached building skill, which is our workshop talks about skills and behavior, but it's more awareness, as you know. And whenever I saw what you do, I realized here's the now what. Yeah. Because your style, maybe it's my bias, your style is a lot like mine. It's conversational, it's storytelling. It is engaging, whether it's in person or in a virtual platform. But that's my hope, is that clients who've worked with us may see continuing the relationship by partnering with us now. And it might be, who knows who it's going to be, but we just want to put that out there into the world.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here now. What? Yeah. And for the clients that I've worked with, they always ask me about inclusion work, and yes, I can do it because of the work that I do. I just haven't done it at a level that you have by any means. So that gives you the area to work in your area of expertise and the opportunity for work in my expertise, and for us to complement and really support our clients in the process. So it's exciting, very exciting.
And you and I both know energy goes out into the world and it draws like energy back to it. So that's my wish and dream, is that possibly somebody watching this may decide, hey, I want to learn more.
Absolutely. So come learn more. So thank you, Scott. This is awesome. This is really great. And I'm excited to see where this takes us on our wonderful journey.
Me too. Big ditto. Thank you so much. We're excited. I'm excited.
Me too. All right.
All right. Thanks, Norbert.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Scott. Okay.
Bye-bye.